Get that poor face to the back of the plane. This is not your place. The cold command sliced through the noise at gate 12. Kelsey Rowan, 29, her navy uniform hugging her frame, wore a crooked smile as sharp as a blade. She spread her arms, blocking the boarding lane in front of seat 2B. In Kelsey's eyes, the dark-skinned man before her was nothing more than an intruder. But for Marcus Ellington, 42, every step forward felt like nails hammered into the polished floor. Every stare that landed on him cut into his skin. He did not respond with anger. He simply held out his boarding pass, his voice low, steady, like a river pressed against a dam. There must be a mistake. This is my ticket. Kelsey did not even glance. She yanked his bag and slammed it to the floor. The crack of metal and glass echoed. Prescription bottles scattered, family photos fluttered under the harsh fluorescent lights. A small graduation photo of Marcus's daughter was crushed beneath the stiletto heel of Kelsey's shoe. Fake documents, obviously, she sneered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. Marcus bent down, his hand trembling as he reached for the pictures. But just as his fingertips touched the paper, Kelsey's heel pinned his hand to the floor. Pain shot through his joints like fire. Still, Marcus did not scream. He looked straight into her cold eyes, silent. Phones lifted into the air. Red recording lights blinked. Live stream circles spun. A teenager in the waiting area whispered, "This TikTok is going to hit 1 million views." Marcus gathered the crumpled photos. His face remained calm, but his jaw tightened, veins rising like steel cables. Humiliation boiled inside, forced down, leaving only the cold fire of restraint in his eyes. He had seen prejudice at airports before, but never imagined he would stand at the center of such a public spectacle. A thought echoed in his mind. Have you ever been judged so quickly that someone would destroy their own career just to humiliate you? On the departure board, red letters flashed coldly. 6:47 p.m. 10 minutes to departure. Numbers ticking down like a time bomb. At the corner, Victor Lang, 54, with a bulging belly and a Rolex flashing, raised his iPhone like a showman. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing a gate crasher right here. I fly this route every month. I always book seat 2B. This guy must have bought a fake ticket somewhere." His voice boomed, confident, drowning out the airport PA. Each word sharpened the scrutiny in the surrounding eyes. Kelsey raised Marcus's boarding pass like a filthy prop. She didn't scan it, just glanced and shook her head. "Irregular document. We need to check everything." Marcus handed over both his ID and ticket. His voice steady, unshaken. "Please scan them into the system. They are valid." "No. Step aside. I will call security." Her words fell like a verdict. The radio on her shoulder crackled. "Gate 12 requesting support. Suspicious passenger. Possible forged documents." The word forged sliced the air like lightning. The crowd buzzed louder. Phones clicked endlessly. On Victor's live stream, the viewer count surged. 47, 89, 156, 203, climbing higher. Marcus collected the pill bottles, his name printed clearly on the labels. Photos of family at graduations, in suits at formal events, all scattered like trash. Among them, a brown Italian leather folder slipped open, revealing embossed words. Meridian Airlines, Q4, Acquisition Strategy. His phone buzzed non-stop. Jennifer Mills, his assistant, Daniel Wu, CFO, Evelyn Brooks, board chair, all declined with a swipe, his face unchanged. But anyone who truly knew Marcus would have recognized the storm brewing behind his silence. The PA voice cut in. Final call for Flight 447 to Chicago. All passengers, please proceed to boarding. 6:49 p.m., 8 minutes. Every second captured by security cameras, by a passenger in 2A, by a teenager streaming TikTok. Each frame a piece of evidence. Kelsey began to hesitate, sweat beading on her brow. But Victor kept performing, feeding 267 live stream viewers. This is why I pay for first class, to avoid scenes like this. Unbelievable. Behind them, a mother clutched her child, fear in her eyes. Other passengers shook their heads quietly, but no one intervened. 6:50 p.m. 7 minutes. Dana Whitaker, 45, shift supervisor, strode in, heels striking the floor like a gavel. Her name badge gleamed. Operations Supervisor. At her side, Officer Sean Patel, 38, broad-shouldered, eyes sharp as blades. What's going on here? Dana's voice carried the authority of 15 years. Passenger possibly using a fake ticket, Kelsey shot back instantly. Victor leaned in with his phone, now with over 1,200 viewers. Comments poured in. Arrest him already. This is why I hate budget airlines. Oh, don't miss this drama. Dana turned, her finger pointing. Sir, please step aside. We need to verify everything. The scene froze. Marcus stood still, his gaze sweeping the room, then lowered his voice. You will want to remember this moment. Kelsey shivered for an instant, but masked it quickly. She had no idea that the man she was blocking, the man being streamed live to thousands with mocking eyes, was the one holding the fate of the very airline they worked for. The PA system crackled, drowning out the murmurs. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are experiencing a slight delay in the boarding process. Please remain patient. But the crowd had no patience left. They ignored the departure board, ignored the announcement. Every eye was fixed on the circle forming around Marcus Ellington. Victor Lang was giddy, performing as if he were the host of a live broadcast. Viewers climbed relentlessly, 1,500, 2,100, 2,600. Comments flooded in like a storm. Arrest him! That's a fake ticket! Somebody call the police! Kelsey Rowan tried to maintain her composure, but her hands trembled as she clutched the boarding pass she had never scanned. She knew 1 second at the reader would reveal the truth, but with thousands of eyes watching through screens, she could not allow herself to back down. Admitting a mistake here meant destroying her own career. Dana Whitaker stepped closer, her voice sharp, carrying the weight of 15 years as a supervisor. Sir, I need you to provide additional proof. If you truly purchased a first-class ticket, you should be able to demonstrate financial capability. Why don't you show us? The air went silent. The words landed like a stone dropped into still water. The ripples were whispers of disbelief. Proof of income? Never heard of such a thing. Marcus raised his head. His voice was low, steady, yet burning beneath the ice. In all my years of flying, never once have I been asked to prove my income to sit in a seat I already paid for. Dana crossed her arms, her eyes cold. This is an unusual situation. We must be cautious. Outside, the clock ticked. 6:52 p.m. Only 5 minutes before departure. Tension stretched like a wire, ready to snap. Officer Sean Patel, broad as a linebacker, stepped forward. His eyes scanned Marcus from head to toe. "Is there any actual security threat here?" he asked in a professional tone. "Possibility of forged documents," Dana replied. But Sean could feel it. Something was wrong. The man before him didn't resemble a fugitive. No shouting, no struggling. He stood tall, his gaze steady, as if waiting for the world to collapse under its own weight. Victor continued narrating for his audience. "You see, TSA is involved now. Clearly serious. This is why I fly private. Even first class is a waste when this happens." Viewership surged past 10,000. The hashtag #FakeFirstClass began trending on Twitter. Marcus exhaled slowly. Not angry, not shaken, just calm, like someone who had endured far harsher battles. He spoke clearly, each word deliberate. "I request you scan the boarding pass right now. 1 second, and the truth will be clear." But Dana refused. Instead, she seized her radio, ordering, "Call airport police." This is beyond normal authority. The words airport police sent a ripple of shock through the crowd. Some passengers dragged their luggage away. A mother clutched her child and hurried from the seating area. The air thickened with dread. Marcus looked around. 4 uniforms surrounding him. Kelsey, Dana, Officer Patel, and another attendant called over. A wall of authority casting its shadow. Yet instead of appearing cornered, Marcus allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. He pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with 17 missed calls. Evelyn Brooks, Daniel Wu, Chloe Grant, Nadia Karim. He swiped past them all and selected one number. The call rang only once. His voice was soft, almost casual. "This is Marcus, Flight 447, Gate 12, right now." He ended the call. Kelsey scoffed. "You think this is a prison? Nobody gives you special rights to make calls." But her smirk evaporated as Dana's radio shrieked. Urgent voices cut through. "Code 7, repeat, Code 7, immediate verification of passenger." "Is it confirmed? Are you certain?" "Yes, confirmed." Dana's face drained of color. Her hand shook so violently, the radio nearly slipped. "Impossible," she whispered, yet the sound carried straight into Victor's live-stream microphone. The broadcast exploded. Viewers erupted in comments. "What's happening? What does Code 7 mean? Something's going down." Sean Patel narrowed his eyes, his posture easing, his hand dropping from his radio. He realized one truth. The balance of power was shifting. Marcus remained still, his hands folded, his eyes steady. Silent. Composed. And that silence shook the entire room. 6:55 p.m. Only 2 minutes left. Their time was running out. But his time had only just begun. The air at Gate 12 thickened like a storm compressed into a single space. Every eye locked on Dana Whitaker, the supervisor once known for her toughness. Now she trembled as if she had just seen a ghost. "Code 7. Passenger identity confirmed." The voice on the radio repeated, cold as steel. "That passenger is a high-level VIP. Absolute confirmation. No mistake." The entire concourse erupted in gasps and whispers. Victor Lang froze, his hand clutching his iPhone, trembling uncontrollably. Comments flooded his live stream. "What's going on? Google his name. Is he a CEO?" Dana swallowed hard, forcing a crooked smile. "Mr. Ellington, there must have been some misunderstanding. Please come this way. We can resolve this privately." But Marcus Ellington did not move. He raised his chin, his eyes blazing like blades reflecting fluorescent light. His voice cut through the air, sharp and commanding. "No. This began in public, and it will end in public." Silence fell like a shroud. Every phone in the terminal pointed at him. Shaky frames, streaming live feeds, all converged on one figure. The man humiliated minutes before now stood like a commander on the battlefield. Marcus bent down, slowly opening the Italian leather briefcase Kelsey had flung aside. Each movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. He drew out a business card. Thick stock, ivory, elegantly simple, yet sharper than any weapon. Marcus Ellington, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Airlines Group. The crowd seemed to lose all air. A few passengers gasped aloud. "Oh my God." But Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out a set of documents, the title in bold letters, "Confidential, Skyward Airlines Acquisition Proposal, $2.3 billion. The figure landed like a hammer blow on every mind. Victor's phone buzzed non-stop with alerts. His chat exploded. "Google confirms it. Meridian is the third largest in the US. They're finished." Kelsey, who had stomped on his family photo, turned pale. She stumbled back a step, one hand covering her mouth, her fingers trembling. "No, it can't be," she whispered, eyes brimming red. Officer Sean Patel instantly shifted. His shoulders eased, his hands lifted in a gesture of conciliation. "Sir, I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding." Dana tried to compose herself, but sweat streamed down her temples. "Mr. Ellington, had we known beforehand?" "Yes, if you had known beforehand." Marcus cut in, his tone like ice. "But I wanted to experience Skyward Airlines through the eyes of an ordinary passenger, and I have experienced enough." A chilling silence followed. On the departure board, the clock ticked 6:57 p.m., the scheduled departure time. But everyone knew the flight no longer mattered. The fate of a multi-billion-dollar deal now hung by a thread. Marcus lifted his phone, its screen glowing. 17 missed calls from Chairwoman Evelyn Brooks, CFO Daniel Wu, General Counsel Nadia Karim. He held it up for the cameras. While I was being humiliated, my entire board kept calling. They want to know why a $2.3 billion deal suddenly went silent. Murmurs swept the concourse like wildfire in dry brush. 2.3 billion. They were buying Skyward? That means... Marcus locked eyes with Dana, his words landing like a verdict. Do you understand what happens when the market learns that Skyward Airlines treats its first-class passengers with humiliation, unlawful searches, and demands for proof of income? Victor, who had postured so confidently before, now muttered weakly into his mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we were wrong." Noise erupted all around, but Marcus remained calm, icy, immovable. He had shown them everything. No shouting, no arguing. Truth and power had unmasked them all. A minute ago, he was the man blocked at the gate. Now, he was the man holding the fate of an entire airline. 6:58 p.m. The flight was officially marked delayed. But for Skyward, their flight into the future had already begun to nosedive. O'Hare Airport had become a vast theater, where every breath and every blink was recorded and streamed live. This was no longer a minor boarding incident. It had turned into a public trial, and Marcus Ellington was the silent judge who held the verdict. He set the stack of documents back into his briefcase, then raised his head to face the crowd. His voice rang clear and steady, but each word struck like the pound of a gavel. Skyward Airlines reported revenue of $847 million last quarter. Net margin 12.3%. Current market capitalization $1.9 billion. The numbers sliced into Dana Whitaker and Kelsey Rowan like a cold blade. Before them was no longer a suspicious passenger, but a man who held data they had never been allowed to see. Victor Lang, still live streaming, swallowed hard. His chat exploded with comments. "He's quoting figures down to the decimal. Google confirms it. He really is the CEO." Marcus pressed on, his tone sharpening with every syllable. Meridian Airlines was prepared to pay a 15% premium for this merger. $2.185 billion. More than 12,800 employees, 43 cities, 2.1 million frequent flyers. The future of all this hangs on how you chose to treat one passenger tonight. A ripple of shock swept the crowd. A woman clutching her child whispered to her husband, "If this is how they treated a CEO, how do they treat ordinary passengers?" Kelsey trembled, her eyes bloodshot, lips moving without sound. Each tear that fell to the tiled floor marked the end of the career she thought untouchable. Marcus turned to face Victor's camera directly. He did not shout. His voice was calm, but its weight made every phone in the room tremble. Federal Regulation 14 CFR Part 382 of the Department of Transportation strictly prohibits any discrimination based on race or economic status. Violations carry fines of $50,000 to $500,000 per incident. A deadly silence followed. Dana wiped her forehead, her palm slick with sweat. She knew every word Marcus spoke was true, and every camera recording was evidence for court, undeniable and damning. "Your employee," Marcus said, pointing straight at Kelsey, "searched my belongings without cause, discarded my medication and family photos." She stomped on my hand, and then in front of dozens of witnesses, she accused me of using a fake ticket. Gasps and murmurs broke out. Those who had once stood with folded arms now shook their heads, eyes blazing with outrage toward Kelsey. Victor whispered into his mic, his voice trembling. "Everyone, this is far beyond what we imagined. This is living proof of discrimination." Marcus no longer looked at Kelsey. He turned to Dana, his eyes as deep and dark as a chasm. "And you, Supervisor. You demanded I prove my income before boarding my flight, a condition that does not exist in any policy. You turned prejudice into your own law." Dana's throat closed. 15 years of career collapsed in a single moment. The clock ticked 6:59 p.m. The flight already 2 minutes late. But no one cared about departure time anymore. They knew the thing plummeting was not a Boeing 737, but the reputation of an airline. Marcus paused. He drew a slow breath, then delivered each word like a blade thrust. "Skyward Airlines has flown itself into the storm. This is no longer about seat to be. It is about whether a deal worth $2.3 billion will still exist after tonight." His voice echoed, landing deep in every listener's chest. Dana's face drained of color. Kelsey broke into sobs. Victor bowed his head, clutching his phone as if wishing he could shut the live stream off, but unable to. Gate 12 fell silent. Everyone understood. The real storm had only just begun. 6:59 p.m. The departure board flashed the word "delayed" in red. But to everyone gathered at Gate 12, the two words truly blazing in their minds were disaster. Dana Whitaker's radio crackled non-stop, frantic voices overlapping. A deep male voice came through, urgent and unyielding. "Gate 12, hold position. CEO Arthur Zhao has been notified. He is en route. Repeat, Skyward's CEO is flying to Chicago right now." Dana looked as though she had been struck down. She staggered, one trembling hand gripping the edge of the check in desk to keep from collapsing. Kelsey dropped into a chair, her face drenched with tears. Everything she had believed was following procedure had turned into undeniable evidence of misconduct. Victor Lang was nearly speechless. His phone shook in his hand as the live stream audience soared past 4,000. Comments flooded in. "Skyward is finished. Skyward's CEO has to apologize. Sell Skyward stock now." What had begun as a stunt to boost his following had turned him into a live witness to a corporate disaster. Marcus Ellington remained standing, his posture unshaken, his silence heavier than any accusation. In seat 2A, Dr. Lena Park kept filming, her eyes reflecting both horror and awe. This man was not just defending himself, he was exposing an entire system. Footsteps pounded from the far end of the concourse. A cluster of airport staff appeared, flanked by 2 Skyward attorneys from the Chicago office and 3 members of the crisis communications team. All clutched their phones, fear etched on their faces. One lawyer leaned toward Dana, his whisper caught clearly by Victor's microphone. "You understand, this is no longer a service issue. This is a federal legal incident. FAA, DOT, and national media are all watching." Dana froze. She had once believed her trademark toughness could control any situation. Now control had slipped through her fingers entirely. Marcus calmly picked up his Italian leather folio, brushed off the dust, then turned toward the crowd. "I have declined 17 calls from the chairwoman and the board of Meridian in the last 20 minutes, he said, his tone steady, not raised, yet carrying to every corner. They want to know why a $2.3 billion deal has gone silent. I have not answered." He paused, letting silence settle like a stone. No one dared breathe. "The answer," Marcus continued, "will depend on how Skyward Airlines chooses to handle the rest of tonight." The crowd erupted in whispers. Even passengers waiting for flights to other cities abandoned their seats, gathering closer to witness the spectacle. No one saw a humiliated passenger anymore. They saw a chief executive weighing whether to destroy an entire airline. Victor muttered into his camera, his voice shaking. "My God, I've never seen anything like this. He could cancel the entire deal. They're finished." At exactly 7:02 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. "Nadia Karim, General Counsel." He answered, his tone calm, measured. "Yes, I'm fine. Yes, everything is being recorded live. I want the entire M&A contract reviewed within 2 hours. Prepare the moral turpitude clause. Do not pull out yet. I want to see how they clean up this mess." He ended the call and lifted his eyes, fixing Dinah and Kelsey in his gaze. "Your last chance is to prove that Skyward knows how to take responsibility." At that moment, the airport's PA system blared with an unusual announcement. "Attention passengers, a high-level situation is being addressed at Gate 12. Flight 447 is temporarily delayed indefinitely." The phrase, "delayed indefinitely," rippled through the crowd like thunder. Yet no one complained. Everyone understood. This was no longer about one flight. This was about the survival of an airline. As the clock struck 7:03 p.m., the scene at Gate 12 had transformed into a battlefield. One calm man standing against a collapsing system of power in panic. And every moment was being recorded by Victor's phone, by Lena Park's camera, and by dozens of unblinking eyes. 9:17 p.m. 2 hours after Gate 12 had erupted into the center of a social media firestorm. On the runway, glistening under amber lights, a Gulfstream G650 touched down at O'Hare and rolled to the VIP stand. Arthur Zhao, 56, CEO of Skyward Airlines, stepped off. His charcoal grey suit was creased from the leather seat he had just left, but his presence was undiminished, posture upright, gaze urgent. Behind him followed Linda Harrington, 52, Chief Legal Officer, Henry Cho, 49, Head of Human Resources, and 3 board members. They had not come to travel. They had come to salvage a sinking ship. For the 90-minute emergency flight, Arthur had said almost nothing. He had read every headline exploding across Twitter, Facebook, and CNBC. On his iPad screen, the hashtag #SkywardScandal had surged to #1 nationwide. Victor Lang's live stream had passed 50,000 views. The name Marcus Ellington dominated every headline. Meridian CEO humiliated at Gate 12. $2.3 billion deal on the brink of collapse. Arthur understood that one misstep could erase 40 years of Skyward's legacy in a single night. When he and his entourage entered the terminal, the once quiet concourse was now packed with passengers, pressed shoulder to shoulder, all eyes fixed on Gate 12. Cell phones rose high, the glow of blue screens turning the moment into a second courtroom. Marcus Ellington was still there, still in his dark suit, his leather folio neatly beside him. His eyes were calm as still water, yet everyone felt the storm roiling beneath the surface. Arthur stopped. For a moment, the air was so thick it carried the sound of every breath. He inhaled deeply, then walked straight toward Marcus. No more buffer of Dana, no more shield of Kelsey, no more excuses. Only CEO facing CEO. Mr. Ellington. Arthur's voice was low and steady, but cracked under the weight of tension. I am Arthur Zhao, CEO of Skywood. I want to personally apologize for everything that has happened. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones captured every word of the historic apology. Dana and Kelsey stood behind, pale as chalk, unable to lift their heads. Marcus raised an eyebrow, but did not answer immediately. He let the silence hang like a blade suspended in the air. The crowd waited. Apologize, he repeated slowly, each word carving itself into the space. Do you believe a single apology can erase what I, and millions like me, have endured? Arthur swallowed hard. He knew he was walking through a minefield. No, Mr. Ellington. I know this is more than an incident. This is a systemic failure. I am not here only to apologize. I am here to listen and to repair. Marcus tilted his head, his gaze unrelenting. Listen and repair? Then give me answers. He turned, pointing directly at Kelsey. Her, the one who humiliated a passenger in the middle of an airport, the one who stomped on my family photos. What happens to her? Kelsey broke into sobs, her shoulders trembling like leaves in the wind. Dana reached to steady her, but she herself was swaying. Arthur exhaled heavily, then turned to Linda Harrington. Linda nodded. Kelsey Rowan, indefinitely suspended. Employee badge revoked immediately. Internal investigation begins at dawn. Marcus did not blink. He pointed again, this time at Dinah. And her, the one who demanded I prove my income to sit in the seat I had already paid for. Dana nearly collapsed, her lips stammering. I thought. Arthur nodded grimly. Dana Whitaker, effective immediately, demoted to customer service representative. Mandatory enrollment in 6 months of implicit bias training. Decision stands as of this moment. The crowd erupted. Passengers clapped. Some shouted. On social media, tweets cascaded. Skywood CEO personally disciplined staff at Gate 12. Kelsey and Dana removed on the spot. Victor whispered into his camera, voice trembling. Folks, I've never seen anything like this. The CEO himself, right here at the gate, disciplining employees in front of passengers. This is history. Arthur turned back to Marcus, his tone heavy with sincerity. I cannot undo what has happened, but I want you to know, Skyward will do whatever it takes to regain trust. Whatever you demand, we will do. Marcus gave a faint smile, but it was colder than steel. He did not say forgiven. He did not say accepted. He simply spoke one sentence. Then prove it. Right here. Right now. Gate 12 fell silent. The beat of a lone bird's wings outside the glass echoed sharp and clear. Because everyone understood, what was about to come would not merely be an apology, but a verdict on the future of Skyward Airlines. Gate 12 had become an open-air courtroom. Every phone camera pointed at one man, Marcus Ellington, The passenger who had just been humiliated in public, now sitting upright like a judge, deciding the fate of an airline. Arthur Zhao stood before him, shoulders still carrying the posture of a CEO, but his gaze lowered. "Whatever you want, we will do," he repeated, his voice hoarse. Marcus did not answer immediately. He slowly bent down, picked up the photo of his daughter in her graduation gown that had been crushed beneath the Kelsey's heel. He brushed off the dust, smoothed the wrinkled edges. When he looked up, his eyes blazed, his voice deep and resonant. "What I want is not an apology, not a promise, but change." The crowd held its breath. Marcus rose to his feet, Italian leather folio in hand, and began to list his terms. His voice did not rise, but each word landed like a hammer on steel. First, Skyward must implement the Dignity First protocol, a service standard guaranteeing zero discrimination, from flight attendants to senior management. No exceptions. Arthur frowned, but nodded. Second, every employee, from pilots to baggage handlers, must undergo mandatory implicit bias training, not once but every quarter. I will appoint leading civil rights experts to design the curriculum. Applause erupted from the passengers. Victor's live stream exploded with thousands of comments. "Yes, this is a real CEO. Skyward has no way out." Third, Skyward will install AI-driven language and behavior monitoring and training programs to detect signs of discrimination early. Machines do not hold bias, but they can reveal human bias. Several Skyward employees exchanged panicked looks. This was no longer an incident. This was a revolution. Marcus paused, locking his eyes on Arthur. Fourth, a reporting app for discrimination will be released for passengers. Any report of unfair treatment will go directly to the CEO's office. No middle management, no cover-ups. Arthur swallowed hard, his hands clasped before him to hide the tremor. Fifth, a restructured reward system. 25% of service staff bonuses will be tied to inclusion metrics, fair and non, discriminatory service scores. If the scores are low, bonuses vanish, and mandatory retraining follows. The crowd murmured. Some clapped, some shouted, "Bravo!" The hashtag #DignityFirst began trending alongside #Skyward scandal. Marcus continued, his voice lower but heavier. Sixth, Skyward must establish a $50 million passenger rights fund. This fund will be dedicated to training, compensation, and support for all future victims of discrimination. Silence fell. Only the pounding of hearts remained as people faced the weight of truth. Arthur exhaled sharply and turned to Linda Harrington, Chief Legal Officer. Linda nodded, whispering, "If we refuse, we lose the deal. We lose the company." Arthur turned back, his face pale, and nodded before all the cameras. Skyward Airlines accepts all of Mr. Ellington's conditions. The concourse erupted. Passengers clapped, some shouted. On social media, tweets surged. Skyward CEO agrees on the spot. Kelsey and Dana finished. Marcus just rewrote the rules. Kelsey collapsed into her seat, hands covering her face, sobbing. Dana stood frozen, like stone. And Marcus? He remained upright, his eyes sharp and cold. No smile, no sign of triumph, only a slight nod, a punctuation mark sealing his declaration. "You," he said, turning to every Skyward employee within 10 meters. "We're wrong to believe you could humiliate a passenger, and no one would know. But today, the whole world has witnessed it." He paused, his voice dropping into the weight of a sentence. "And from today, Skyward no longer has the right to choose how it treats passengers. It is the passengers who will choose how you treat them." 7:10 p.m. 13 minutes past departure. But no one remembered the flight anymore. They all understood. From this moment, American aviation had entered a new chapter of history. 7:30 p.m. O'Hare Airport was still packed, as if every passenger had turned into a witness to history. What happened at Gate 12 was no longer an incident. It had become the nation's biggest breaking news. Screens across the terminal streamed CNN live. The red headline scrolled across, "Meridian CEO humiliated at Skyward, $2.3 billion deal shaken." Local news outlets were live streaming non-stop. Every minute another reporter appeared, microphone aimed straight at the crowd. Victor Lang stood frozen, his phone at just 9% battery, but he dared not shut it off. His live stream had surpassed 10,000 viewers. Comments flooded in. "This is aviation's Watergate. Skyward is finished. Marcus is rewriting the rules." At Skyward's Dallas headquarters, the Media Command Center wall was plastered with tweets, articles, and TikTok videos. The hashtag #DignityFirst had broken into the global top 5 trending topics. PR staff buried their heads in their hands, some weeping, others frantically drafting press releases. At Gate 12, Arthur Zhao stood before dozens of cameras. He was no longer hiding backstage. His voice was low, weary, but forced to go public. "Skyward Airlines officially accepts the reform conditions put forth by CEO Marcus Ellington. Effective immediately, all staff will undergo mandatory implicit bias training. A passenger discrimination reporting app will be developed and launched within 60 days, and a $50 million passenger rights fund will be established tomorrow morning." The crowd erupted. Some passengers clapped. Those filming leaned in closer. Major news outlets rolled the headline, "Skyward bows to Meridian CEO." Marcus sat still. No applause, no nod of approval. He only observed, his eyes deep, as if weighing every word. This was not a moment of personal victory. It was the moment he turned humiliation into a reform accord. In the seating area, Dr. Lena Park, who had filmed patiently from seat 2A, thought to herself, "This is teaching material for an entire generation to come." Dana Whitaker, pale as a sheet, bowed her head as she was demoted on the spot. Kelsey Rowan slumped in her chair, her badge confiscated, her hands trembling uncontrollably. Her sobs blended with the flashes of cameras, composing the dirge of a career cut short. 7:45 p.m. While other planes lifted off from the runways, Gate 12 remained gridlocked. But no one complained. Everyone knew they had just witnessed a turning point. A middle-aged traveler, his suit rumpled after a long business trip, whispered to his colleague, "Do you realize? We're watching an industry change before our eyes." Meanwhile, on Twitter, CNBC posted, "Skyward stock expected to fall 8,012% at market open tomorrow." On Reddit, thousands of comments dissected the clause, tying 25% of bonuses to inclusion metrics. And on TikTok, the clip of Kelsey stomping on Marcus's hand was reposted with bold text, "Stepping on a $2.3 billion CEO." It racked up millions of views. Marcus stayed silent. He held the photo of his daughter, gazing at it for a long moment. Then he placed it back into his leather case and locked it. When he rose to his feet, cameras rattled like a hailstorm. "Tonight," Marcus spoke, his voice echoing across the concourse, "is only the beginning. Real reform will be measured on every flight, every moment. And I will be there, not as a CEO, but as a passenger, to observe." Passengers erupted into applause. Many shouted, "Dignity first! Dignity first!" Arthur Zhao bowed his head slightly. He knew from this moment forward, Skyward Airlines was no longer his company alone. It had become a test for the entire industry. 8:00 p.m. As the crowd finally began to disperse, everyone knew they had witnessed a new chapter, and Gate 12, once an ordinary boarding gate, had become the symbol of a night that changed history. 8:30 p.m. The news spread like wildfire. This was no longer just a hashtag, no longer just a live stream. The story at Gate 12 had outgrown a single airline. CNN ran the red ticker, "Skyward Scandal Shakes the Nation." Fox News hammered it harder. "Discrimination costs $2.3 billion USD." CNBC dissected every condition Marcus had laid out, charts flashing across the screen. Dignity First Protocol, AI monitoring, the $50 million fund. In Washington, senators dialed each other in urgent calls. "We cannot ignore this," one declared live on MSNBC. "If a CEO can be treated this way, imagine what ordinary passengers endure." The Department of Transportation immediately announced a full-scale investigation. The FAA convened an emergency task force on passenger rights. 9:00 p.m., Harvard Business School sent an internal email. "Collect all data on the Skyward incident for a new case study." And at Chicago Law, Professor Martin Cruz told his students, "This is a living example of how one individual can turn humiliation into systemic reform." On Twitter, #DignityFirst climbed to the global #1 spot. Hundreds of thousands shared their own stories of discrimination in hotels, restaurants, retail stores. It was as if society had been handed a mirror, forced to look at the face of bias itself. At Meridian Airlines' New York office, the board of directors held an emergency meeting. Chairwoman Evelyn Brooks set her phone down, her voice firm. "We found the right CEO. Ellington not only protected the deal, he set a new standard. And now, every service industry will have to follow it." Meanwhile, in a small apartment on the outskirts of Chicago, Marcus's family sat glued to the television. His daughter, the one in the photo that had been trampled, quietly wiped her tears. "Dad turned shame into pride," she whispered. His elderly mother nodded, eyes shining like torches. "My son did not strike back with fists. He used his mind to change the world." 10:00 p.m. The numbers began to surface. Skyward stock and after-hours trading had plunged 9%. Investment funds dumped shares en masse. On financial forums, Thousands of traders buzzed. Skyward will lose at least 200 million in market cap by morning. But another headline exploded. Meridian's stock jumped 7% overnight. Investors dubbed it the Ellington effect. At the airport, as the last passenger finally left Gate 12, a team of FAA technicians reset surveillance cameras and sealed the entire area. Every frame, every word had been archived as evidence, not just to prosecute Skyward, but to pave the way for new federal regulations. That night, Marcus sat alone in his Chicago hotel suite. In front of him, his laptop glowed with 37 unread emails, from Congress, from media outlets, from CEOs of other corporations. But he did not answer right away. He pulled out the photo of his daughter, the one once crushed under a heel, but now pressed flat inside a plastic sleeve. He stared at it for a long time, then smiled faintly. Sometimes, to change an entire industry, all it takes is one moment of humiliation if you are brave enough to turn it into fire. The clock struck 11 p.m. But tonight, America did not sleep. 1 year later. Gate 12 at O'Hare was no longer a place remembered for humiliation, but had become a symbol. Right beside the boarding lane, a polished bronze plaque gleamed on the wall. Dignity in travel, a pledge to treat every passenger with fairness, established here on this day. Travelers often paused, lifting their phones to capture it. They did not just see a plaque. They saw proof that truth could shatter an entire system if someone was steadfast enough to stand up. Within 12 months, American aviation had changed profoundly. The FAA issued a new regulatory framework, unofficially named but widely known as the Washington Standards. Every airline, from the largest carriers to regional operators, was required to install direct reporting systems for discrimination that reached the CEO. Violations were no longer buried behind the closed doors of local offices. Skyward Airlines, once teetering on the edge of collapse, had become a model. Quarterly bias training was enforced across the board. Employees who once resisted now joined voluntarily, because no one wanted to become the next Kelsey. Kelsey Rowan, after 6 months of suspension, completed a cultural program at Northwestern. When she returned, she was no longer the arrogant enforcer she once had been, but one of the most respected internal trainers. "I once stepped on a passenger's hand," she admitted in her first class. "Now my job is to make sure none of you ever repeat that mistake." Dana Whitaker, once a proud supervisor, demoted to frontline staff, had taken on the role of diversity and inclusion liaison. Her bitter experiences had turned her into a pioneer in preventing future bias. Arthur Zhao remained CEO, but was no longer the absolute authority. In every board meeting, a monthly report on inclusion metrics sat in front of him. Each low score was a direct warning. He knew this was the price for letting Gate 12 become a scar. Marcus Ellington was still the CEO of Meridian, but he had become more than that. He was now a symbol of leadership through intellect and composure. Business schools included the Skyward Incident in their core curriculum. His lectures at Harvard and Wharton on leadership through dignity filled every seat, with waiting lists stretching for months. CEOs across industries, banking, hospitality, retail, sought his counsel on how to turn crisis into reform. The numbers told the story. Skyward saw a 34% increase in customer satisfaction, a 67% drop in discrimination complaints, and an expansion into 5 new routes thanks to restored trust. More importantly, millions of passengers now felt welcomed as equals. In Chicago, Lena Park, who had recorded the entire incident from seat 2A, was now an independent advisor to multiple airlines. Her video became an official training resource, not just in aviation, but also in hotels, restaurants, and hospitals. At Meridian headquarters, Marcus hung the restored photograph of his daughter in a new glass frame. Each time he looked at it, he remembered that night at Gate 12. A stain had turned into a milestone. A moment of humiliation had become the force of reform. He once said in the year-end press conference, "There are 2 paths when facing injustice: retaliation or reforming the system. The first is easy, quick, but leaves only ruin. The second is hard, lonely, but it protects an entire generation to come. I chose the second path." And America had chosen it with him. Gate 12 was no longer just a place to board a flight to Chicago. It was a reminder to every passenger, every employee, every CEO. Respect is not a privilege, it is a minimum right. Tonight, as flights lifted into the sky, the golden lights of O'Hare reflected on the "Dignity in Travel" plaque. And someone in the crowd whispered softly, "We have come a long way, from a hand once trampled to an aviation industry that now bows to human dignity." Some stories do not end with a period, but open an entirely new chapter. From a hand once trampled at Gate 12, Marcus Ellington transformed humiliation into a torch that lit the path for an entire industry. He did not choose revenge. He chose reform. And because of that, millions of passengers now step onto planes with the respect they deserve. The question for you, the one watching this video: what would you do when faced with injustice? Stay silent and accept it, or turn that very moment into the spark of change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Type dignity. If you believe that the dignity of every human being is untouchable. And do not forget to subscribe, so together we can spread more stories where wisdom and composure triumph over prejudice. Because sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to stand up, and the whole world must bow.